Thank you, Mr. President. I want to commend my colleagues who are sounding the alarm about Russia's interference in U.S. elections and who have worked tirelessly for months on their respective committees to get the answers that Americans deserve and give the confidence Americans need to know their government is committed to preventing such interference from ever happening again. This work is incredibly important to people around the country and in my home state of Washington. I have heard from countless people who deeply love this country, but fear for its institutions and are concerned about the integrity of its elections. Because here are the facts. More than a year ago, U.S. intelligence agencies concluded Russia interfered in the last U.S. presidential election, calling Russia's meddling, and I quote, significant escalation in directness, level of activity, and scope of effort compared to previous attempts. And that's not my opinion. It's not a partisan statement. It's a fact. Even more troubling, they're already back at it. We know because our president's own hand-picked CIA director said last week that of course Russia is trying to meddle in this year's midterm elections. This is exactly why this Congress approved sanctions months ago in order to punish Russia and show them the steep price of doing this again. Because if there is one thing we should all be able to agree on, it is that no one should get away with such a devious attack on our democracy. But somehow, while the public is demanding action, the White House has gone silent, refusing to implement the sanctions for reasons President Trump can't or won't explain. The same president who has no problem speaking and tweeting on any other topic under the sun clams up when it comes to Russia, or he tries to change the subject, or he launches a political attack. The same president who promised to put America first has failed to live up to the most basic duty of defending our elections and enforcing congressional actions to punish Russian meddling. The same president who promised law and order has been lashing out against a special counsel investigation with a campaign to discredit our agencies of law and order by criticizing the men and women of our nation's top law enforcement agencies, firing or threatening to fire those who stand up to him, and sowing doubt about the media that dares report the facts. And let's remember, the Putin regime that President Trump is so fond of is one that has invaded and annexed part of Ukraine and continues to incite war in Ukraine, is propping up the murderous Assad regime and is every bit as responsible for those heinous acts as Assad himself, and constantly tries to instigate conflict by threatening our troops around the world. Mr. President, perhaps the most disappointing piece of this, President Trump is now not acting alone. He gets help from members of Congress who've joined the partisan attacks on the FBI and the Department of Justice. Just think about that. We have a president and members of the Republican Party more interested in helping a foreign power get away with interfering in our elections than allowing an investigation to run its course. Mr. President, it's simply stunning how far some of my Republican colleagues will go to undermine the special counsel and congressional investigations in order to score political points. This doesn't just put them at odds with the public in the short term. This has long-term consequences for the men and women who protect our country from harm. A few days ago, a former supervisory special agent with the FBI who served as a counterterrorism investigator and special assistant to the Bureau's director explained why he was now resigning from the FBI in order to speak publicly. He said his resignation was painful, but, quote, the alternative of remaining quiet while the Bureau is tarnished for political gain is impossible, end quote. He said he worries the damage from attacks on the integrity of the FBI could last generations. So there are a number of things this Congress must commit to. First of all, we must ensure that Special Counsel Robert Mueller stays on the job and continues to follow the facts wherever they may lead without threats or intimidation and with the resources he needs. We already know the President talked about firing Mr. Mueller last year. Well, the President should be on notice. Firing Mueller is not an option. And the same goes for trying to fire Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. And I also want to be clear, doling out presidential pardons to try to cover up any collusion or obstruction of justice is unacceptable and will be met with furious resistance across the country. You know, this is about our elections. It is about our national security. It is about our standing in the world. And no one should stand in the way of a thorough investigation. In the coming days and weeks and months, Congress must work to fulfill its duty to the American people by ensuring the integrity of our elections and safeguarding investigations by allowing them to run their course free from political pressure. The question is whether the Trump administration and all members of Congress will choose to act in the best interest of our country and our democracy, or whether they will continue to act out of self-preservation and short-sighted political gain. Mr. President, the world is watching. Thank you. I yield the floor.